Hello and welcome to episode 107 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is August 16th, 2021. Today I'm wearing a shawl that I did not knit myself, but I have actually knit the same pattern. And it's a pattern, I think it's by a German designer called Birgit Freier, and it was in some magazine years ago. And it's a fairly long shawl that's not quite as deep, and it's not a triangular shawl, but more like a rounded or crescent, I think is the word, shaped shawl. And it has this lace pattern in the middle with some stockinette in the side, and then there another lace pattern starts, and then the border is all knit in the same pattern. And the yarn is a opal sock yarn with cotton, so it's part cotton, part wool, and part nylon. And back when the pattern appeared in a magazine, I knit the shawl in, I think it was some pink colors, and I gave the shawl to my sister, and my colleague knitted this shawl as a shop sample and had it in the shop for a long time. And she likes knitting those colors that are very colorful, but she doesn't like to wear them. So at one point she asked me if I wanted to have it, and I said, of course, I would love to have it. And that's how I got this shawl. And the jacket, the cardigan I'm wearing is a fairly short, very light, very nice jacket. It's a very easy pattern setup. You start at the back, you increase for the sleeves, then you knit to the top of the shoulders, and then stitches are cast off for the neck, and then you knit both fronts separately, and then with some increases you build up for the front, then you cast off the stitches for the sleeve and you go straight down. And it's very simple. There's just two seams at the sides and all the edges are crocheted around, and then you add some buttons, and that's it. And the cotton is called Secondo. It's by Lana Grossa, and it's a mix of cotton and silk, and maybe some acrylic. I'm not too sure. I don't remember. But it's a very interesting structure. It's this sort of rounded yarn, but it's nice to work with, and it's wonderful to wear. It's a fantastic summer yarn. I still have some of that yarn at home that I want to knit into more summer tops and cardigans sometime. Yeah, that's what I'm wearing today. Right, quite summery summer stuff. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Okay, on to finished objects. And today I have two finished objects. And the first one, the older project, are the Sweet Roses Socks 2nd edition. This was a pattern from the Sockmadness, and when I started this round in the Sockmadness, this is the other side, I started off with this yarn, but the pattern that's on top of the foot doesn't really show very clearly. It does show a bit, so I don't think it wasn't a waste of time to knit the pattern. But for the competition, that was the Sockmadness, I wasn't sure that the pattern would show clearly enough for me to go on to the next round. So I started knitting in a different yarn, finished those socks for the competition, and then when the Sockmadness was over, I went back to these socks. And this yarn is by Opal. It's the Black Dragon yarn, and it has this mix of green and black, and then the black yarn that's spun into the green and black yarns are spun together, and the thickness of the black yarn varies, so it's sometimes thinner, sometimes thicker, and then the green yarn changes in color. So it's a really interesting yarn that I love to knit with. And I chose green partly because of the name of the pattern, Sweet Roses. I wanted the roses to sit on a bed of green, and also because I want to donate these socks to the organization in Germany who help women with ovarian cancer, and they asked for green socks to be donated so that they can give them to these women. Yeah, so green socks, sweet roses. I embroidered the roses in 4 different colors. At first I had planned to use 3, but then I didn't want to repeat a color, so I picked another color to embroider the roses on. And having done that before with the other socks, I already knew a little better how it works. I still had to look at the instructions and I was still struggling, but by the last flower I was a lot more, it went a lot easier than with the first one. So the colorful yarn is opal sock yarn in a solid color, and then I used 3mm beads they're all out of one box, but they're different colors, all ranging from yellow to orange to red. And then in the middle I used a 4mm green bead. Yeah, so that's that. I changed up the placement of the colors so the socks are not the same. But if looked at from the front, I placed the colors so that every color can be seen when the socks are worn. That was my idea. Yeah, so really happy that these socks are done. They will go into the bag with all the socks to be donated, and then a few times a year a friend of mine who helps that organization sends these socks off. So that was finished object number 1, and finished object number 2 is the hat I started last week or the week before. So this is the Westfalen wolle yarn. It's a German yarn from German sheep that's being produced in Germany. It's an undyed yarn, so it has a rather rustic feel to it, but I think it's fantastic for color work because it's not slippery, so it's really easy to manage the floats in the back of your knitting. And yeah, I think it's a really nice hat. It's a pattern by Tin Can Knits. It's called Prism, and yeah, I finished knitting the hat. I washed it, and that made quite a difference. So it's still not like really extremely soft, but it's a lot nicer to touch than it was before the washing, and the stitches look a lot more even now, and I think it's going to be a really warm, nice hat come winter. It's a bit big for me, but I think that's quite okay. I don't mind them being a bit bigger, and especially when it gets really cold, I tend to wear 2 hats on top of each other, and then I can wear a soft hat underneath, and I can wear this thicker hat on top, and I should be really nice and warm. And also I think it sort of keeps off the rain a little bit. Not like completely, but if it just rains slightly, I'm pretty sure I'll stay dry underneath it. When I washed the hat and I squeezed the water out, put it in a towel, rolled it up, pressed it, stepped on it. And when I got it out, it felt almost dry. I knew it wasn't, I knew it was still really damp, but it didn't feel wet in a way other things feel wet. And I could have worn it that way. It was still damp, but I think it would still have kept me warm. Yeah, so I'm really happy with the hat. I'm happy with the first sample of this yarn, and I'm looking forward to starting the next bit. Can't make up my mind what to knit, that's why I haven't started anything yet. Yeah, but having finished 2 projects, I started something new. And I'll probably break with my rule of having to finish 2 things to start one, because some of my projects are really big and some of the things I want to start are fairly small. So I don't think it makes sense to finish 2 pullovers to start one little cowl or loop or something. So, and also I feel like it should be okay to have at least 3 pairs of socks on the go. So maybe the socks will be a separate category, and if I finish socks I can start new ones, something like that. Yeah, I'm still, but then if I knit socks that are not sock weight but DK weight or even thicker, then they're fairly quick projects, so maybe they should count in a different category. I don't know yet, so I keep thinking about these things, can't really make up my mind. Anyway, on to works in progress. Socks. I did not knit on the Madeline socks. That's the last Sockmadness pattern that I'm working on at the moment. It's the last pair that I actually started knitting during the competition, and I had planned to knit 10 rounds every week. I completely forgot to knit on them last week. I do promise to make it a priority this week, and I'll see how far I get. I did actually knit on the socks that I'm knitting for my husband for his birthday, and I finished sock number 1. So it's a half finished object. It's a rainforest color by Opal, and it's a fairly simple sock because I know my husband doesn't care for lots of different patterns. I started with a 2x2 rib, and then I gradually changed to stockinette at the back of the leg, and then put in a fish lips kiss heel, and then just simply stayed with that setup with the rib on top and the stockinette on the bottom. It's a star toe, it's what it's called in German. Hope it's the same in English. It's my favorite toe. So it's really easy to do for me. I don't have to think a lot. And now that I know how many rounds I have to knit, the second should be even easier to do. I did cast on, not a lot yet, but at least I've cast on and started knitting. And then this is a project that I can easily put in my bag. I can knit on it whenever I have a few minutes, because except for this bit where I have to look at when I started the stockinette, it's really easy. And if I get it wrong, if I do it a bit different on the second sock, it won't matter. My husband won't notice. So that's that. And then I started a new pair of socks because I finished one pair. I felt I could start another one. And I'm using another Opal rainforest color, but this is a really old yarn that I had in my stash, and I checked it on Ravelry, because on Ravelry in the Opal group you can find all the colors and you can see when they were sold, when they were made. And I found out that this color of the rainforest series was produced in 2011. So this yarn is 10 years old and has been waiting for someone to knit pink socks, and that's what I promised to do. I think I promised to do that last year, and I somehow forgot about it. But now I remembered, and I picked out that yarn. And after I realized that there's no very pink yarn coming out from Opal this year. There's lots and lots of beautiful colors, but nothing that seemed pink enough for me for this present. So I thought it's good to use some old yarn as well. And a friend of mine was making more stitch markers, and then she knows that I like to use smaller stitch markers for my socks, and she made me this stitch marker, and I thought that's perfect. I was just waiting for me to pick up the pink socks. So the pink socks have a beautiful pink stitch marker. And I am knitting the pattern Rome Socks by Knitting Expat by Mina from her ebook Around the World in 8 Socks. I think she's already published 5 of the 8 patterns, if I'm not mistaken. And so far I've only knit 2. I've knit the London and the Rome socks. Both I've given away. This I will give away, but I will probably knit the Dubai socks for somebody else as well. I might do the Hong Kong socks for myself, but I will definitely knit the Tokyo socks for myself. Partly because it's Japan, and also because it's a beautiful pattern, and I already know which yarn I'm going to use, but not yet. So this is the Rome socks out of that ebook, and it has these wrapped stitches, which I think is quite nice. But because with these wrapped stitches the knitting can get a bit tighter, I decided to just do the pattern on the front, and then on the back I'm just doing a simple 1x1 rip. Yeah, and that's how far I got. I might put in a solid color pink heel and toe, depends on how the solid pink that I have goes with this color. It's just an idea that I've had. I haven't had time to check the colors together. yeah, but I like how the colors knit up. The pattern is not very difficult. Mina has produced a video where she shows 3 different ways of wrapping these stitches, and the third method that she shows is really quick and easy to do, and so that's what I'm doing for my socks, and yeah, I enjoy that. So that's all the socks. Then on to the sock yarn projects that are not going to be socks, and I did knit on my Glacier dress. This is the original is a tunic. It's a pattern by Ruchi Locatelli. It's called Glacier Tunic or just Glacier, don't remember. And it's out of the Interpretations number 5, I think. It's one of those little books that she produces every year with Vera Velimäki. Not quite sure how to pronounce that. And it's the only book I have out of that series, but I really like it. And yeah, so I decided to knit that tunic as a dress. I picked 5 different opal colors that I'm knitting one after the other. That's color 1, color 2, this is color 3, and I'm on to color 4. And last time I showed you the project, I was still doing I was still working with both yarns. So those 12 rounds between here and here is where I changed the 2 colors, where I mixed them, and now I'm completely onto this color. It's out of the Comedy series. It's a beautiful mix of blue and lilac and gray, and this is what it looks like so far. And again, I think the part where I switched between the 2 colors is really difficult to say which is which color because they are quite alike. But once I start knitting just the one color, it's fairly obvious because of all the purple that's in this ball that wasn't in this. But yeah, there's a bit of purple up here. So I think all in all, it should look nice. Yeah, and now I can just keep knitting with the one color, and then I'll be knitting away impatiently, waiting to add in the 5th color, which will be the last one. So at some point I hope to finish the project. Okay, and the next garment that I'm knitting out of sock yarn is the square shrug that I'm sort of making up. I chose my own lace pattern to put in the square. The idea to knit a square and make a shrug out of it is not my own, it's not new. Several people have done that, and I knit one out of a book. But there the lace pattern and the increases for the square didn't line up, so I picked a lace pattern that is such that the increased lines of the square and the increased lines of the lace pattern line up, and I think it's a lot easier to knit that way. The diamonds have 4 little holes, so another little lace pattern in the middle, and yeah, I really like that. And I finished knitting the first ball of yarn. And last week I showed you 100 grams of opal sock yarn crocheted into a square, and today I can show you 100 grams of opal sock yarn knit into a square, and it's quite a difference. The granny square I showed you last week is it's not very solid. It still has like some holes in between the stitches, but still the crochet stitches are a lot denser than the knitting. So I told you last week that the square was about as big as a top would be for me, and today I can show you the square that I got from knitting 100 gram of opal yarn, and this is one of the 100 Wasser inspired colorways, and this is a lot bigger than the crochet square was. So I think the crochet square was maybe this big, so from shoulder to shoulder, and this is, yeah, this could be like a boxy styled sweater if I made 2 of those and sewed them together, and then you could knit little sleeves, and you could have a boxy style sweater, which maybe I should do at some point, but not now. This is going to be this shrug, I can quickly show you how it's going to work out. So once the square is big enough, I will fold it in half and I will sew together part of this side and part of that side, and then the holes will be the armholes, and one part will be around the neck and the other one will hang down the back, and this is how you make the shrug. Yeah, but I deliberately stopped knitting after I finished the first ball of yarn so I could show you how big this got. Yeah, and another thing I want to show you. So I think I was using all the long cables I have at the moment. The next project I want to show you is the Town Square shawl by Romy. Romy Hill, one of my favorite lace pattern designers. I'm knitting her Town Square shawl out of her book. I'm using Opal subscription yarn, and it's the colorway that we use for the pattern battle over in the Opal Abo group on Ravelry. And last week I told you that I was almost finished with knitting the beginning triangle, and I finished doing that. So that's, you can see it's a triangle, and you can also see that I actually knit in the contrast color, the neon green. So once you finish knitting, you start up here and then you knit short rows, and once you get to the tip you cut off the yarn, and then you go back to the side and then you start knitting along the sides, and it now gets a knit on border. And I thought it'd be fun to have that transition show by using a contrast color, and I thought the green goes nicely with the green that's dyed into the yarn, and the transitioning pattern has like these little what do I call them, like little dots or little round thingies. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So the first two rows you increase a lot of stitches and then you decrease a little again, and this increasing and decreasing creates these little circles kind of things. And I really like the way they looked in the green, so I knit the last row of that little pattern. It's a 4-row pattern, and I knit the 4th row already with the blue yarn again, so that these little dots will really show in the green. So that's what I've done. Put in a really long cable so I can show you, and now I will start with the next pattern that goes into the border, and I think that it doesn't repeat exactly, but they're two patterns that are quite similar, and then the last pattern is really big again, and that's different again, and then yeah, it'll take a long time for me to do that, and while I do that I can think about whether or not I want to cast off with the green, and if I run out of yarn I will definitely cast off in the green. So that's the plan at the moment. Yeah, so it took me most of the first 100 grams to knit the triangle, but not all of it, so I still have a little left over. I have a second bowl, and then we'll see how far I get. So that's a Town Square shawl by Romy, and I have two more. Oh, I forgot the little pullover. I wanted to show that after I showed the Glacier dress, but it doesn't matter. That's the little heartstring pullover. It's another pattern by Jorge Locatelli. I'm using 2 3-ply yarn by Opal held together, and it's a little kids pullover. And last week I think I was just about to start decreasing stitches, and now I have knit 2 rows of decreases. Let me see. I think it's a good thing it's not so easy to see. I think there's a row of decreases here and one here, and then I stopped knitting because I wasn't quite sure how far to go before the next row of decreases comes, and then I read the pattern and I realized I'm exactly at the point where the short rows are knit. So now I'm going to knit a few short rows to raise the back and lower the front, and then there are going to be 1 or 2 more decrease rounds, and then I'll finish with some ribbing. So that's not a lot to do anymore, but bits where I have to refer to the pattern. Heartstring. The original pattern has some color accents, but I didn't want to do them because the color is the yarn is so colorful anyway. And one of my friends said that with these white stripes here and here, it sort of looks as if I put some accent color in. So that's quite funny. Yep. So that's the kids pullover. And then I have one more garment that I'm making out of sock yarn, and that's the Crochet Square. Last week I showed you how far I got with 100 grams. I have now crocheted another 60 grams into the square, and I've decided it's big enough. And because I wanted to see how big it would be after washing and blocking, I washed and blocked it last night. So I have 40 grams left, and I'm pretty sure that this will be enough to do a sleeve. It will probably even be too much. I think I want my sleeve to be around 16 rounds of granny square, and this granny has 35 rounds now. And I did not block it very aggressively. I mainly blocked it to make sure it's straight, because when you do a granny square and you go round and round and round, it's sort of, it's usually not quite straight. It's sort of, I don't know, the corners sort of tilt to one direction, all of them in the same direction, don't know why. But I know you can change that if you don't go round and round all the time, but if you turn your work around every round. So you do one round this direction, and then you go the other way, and then this way again and the other way. And I've decided I will do that for the sleeve, just to see what the difference is. But now my huge square, because that's what the instructions said. The instructions said crochet 1 huge square. So this is the size I have now. And I think it's maybe the same size as the knit one, or even, I don't know, is it the same size or even bigger? Let's check. Ah yeah, it's bigger than the knit square. So the knit square goes to about here, but it's not a lot bigger, considering that the knit square is 100 grams and the crochet one is 160 grams. It just shows you how much more yarn you need when you crochet. Even though it does have holes, it's not that solid. But anyway, so this is my huge square. So it's really wide. It's really sort of a boxy style thing. You can see this is where where the ends and beginnings of my rounds were. So the colors make funny patterns there. But they do make some funny patterns elsewhere as well, so that's okay. Yeah, I'm really, really happy with this. I can't wait to finish the other pieces. I've decided to go for the symmetric way. So I won't put in a neckline into the square and have a very asymmetric front and back, but I rather crochet the same square, and I've decided to, when I do the last round, I will crochet the pieces together directly. So I will crochet together the sides, leave the armhole, crochet the shoulder, leave the neck, crochet the shoulder, leave the armhole, crochet the side. Might keep a bit open at the sides like a side slit. And then when I crochet the sleeves, again with the last round, I will crochet the sleeve onto the front and back and also crochet the sleeve together. That's my plan. I'm not quite sure if it's going to work out, but I think it should. So that's what I'm going for. That would mean that I won't have to sew anything on this piece. I'll just have to weave in the ends, but I won't have to sew any seams, and I like the idea. So that's what I'm going for. So I think the next piece I will start is the sleeve, and I will do the change of round in the middle of the side, but I will turn my work every every round I will turn my work just to see what the difference is. And then for the other, so let's say this is the back, then for the front I will do the end of round in the corner, but I will go round and round. And for the second sleeve I will do the change of the round in the corner, but I will flip it over at the end of every round again. So basically I will make 4 different granny squares in the same yarn, but with slight differences. That's the plan. Okay, not talking of granny squares. Talking of the Carnaby crochet along, I almost finished the second sleeve. So did not do a lot, I just added those stripes. I need to crochet 2 more rows of dark blue because that's what I did on the first sleeve. When I've done that, I will crochet the 1 row that will sort of straighten that line. I will have to do that on the first sleeve as well. And then I can start the assembly of the pieces. That's something I'm looking forward to, but it will take some time. We'll see when I get to it. And one more crochet project. I think 2 weeks ago I showed you the green squares that I crocheted while I was on holiday. And last week one of my students had crocheted granny squares and she wanted to attach them to each other to make a vest. She's crocheting the invested vest. And I decided to show her how to do that with my green squares. So I have added 12 more squares to this blanket. And I already had 12 squares. So now this is twice as big as it was before. For a blanket, it's still fairly small, but yeah, it's just one of these projects that I will keep working on every now and then. I have 1 square left. I already finished one of those squares, but I didn't want to add it on by itself. So I will crochet more of those green squares. And when I have enough to attach them in a row at the same time, or 2 rows or whatever, then I will put them on. Yeah, and that brings me to my last project, our knit along, the Optic blanket. And last week I didn't manage to finish my square. Last night I had the choice to either finish the crochet square and wash and block it, or finish this one, and I went for the crochet square. I was just so excited to see how that comes out. And I have started last week's square. It's this blue color. It's the second yarn in the blanket that's not a sock yarn. This is a pure merino yarn called Sienna by Wolle Rödel, and I picked it because the gauge is the right one, the weight is the right one, and I like the color with the other blue. At first I was a bit worried that the contrast between the 2 blues wouldn't be enough, but looking at it like this, I think it looks really nice. So this is the rest of the square. And the last square that I will knit this week is going to be a dark purple. And and I'm pretty sure I can finish this square and do this square this week. And then next week I can show you a finished 9 square. And then I get to start the next one. It's funny how exciting it always is to start something new. So that's another good reason to do this blanket in pieces. So I get the satisfaction of finishing something and the excitement of starting something new 9 times and not just once. No, not 9 times, 6 times. I'm making 6 of these 9 squares. That's the plan. Yeah, so that was everything I knit and crocheted last week. No new yarn this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!